What you buying, bud?
Hey, what's going on, man?
What are you picking up?
Oh, I'm just at the Ford dealer with my wife's car.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were buying that Mercedes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, go look at my Facebook page. You hadn't seen what I just found on there, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, everybody would be so impressed.
Steve, are you buying a new car?
No, not at this time.
The backgrounds are back.
Oh yeah, this is an actual background.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm sitting in the middle of Tom Woodford.
Why? If you're not buying a car.
My wife's car is getting worked on.
Oh.
But Rosie, if you haven't done it yet, go look at my Facebook page. You'll see what a car I just found. I think it should be my next car.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll go check it out after we're done here. Guys, I think we should start this meeting right now, since there's a group of us here and we're gonna like screw with all the people who are gonna show up at 9:03. Sounds good?
Sure.
Okay, also we're opening up with like a table question this morning. So because I love doing this with smaller groups because table questions are the best. But I want everyone to introduce themselves by saying their name and their ideal way to start a morning. But I don't want to go first. So I'm gonna call on Andy because he just put it like this. Are you purposely not talking, Andy?
No, I just forgot to unmute. Sorry.
Oh.
I don't know. Ideal way to start the morning. I do about every morning. I wake up, I make coffee, I make sure all three animals in the house are taken care of and happy and have had attention first thing in the morning, and then meditation straight away. And that's pretty much how I start every day. Pretty great.
That's so good. How long do you meditate for?
Just depends on the day. Depends on how much time I have.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 5 minutes to half an hour, just depending on the day. So
that's so awesome. Well done. Okay, I'm just gonna keep calling people out since we're not in like a specific order. John, what is your favorite way to start a morning?
I like to go for morning walks or spend time outside in the morning before it gets hot. And any day you can go outside and you don't have to wear a coat. That's a good day for me.
Yes, that is so good. All right, Steve, is your favorite way to start a morning at the car shop?
Yeah, sure. I mean, whatever keeps my wife happy, I'm all for it. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I usually drink a couple cups of coffee. Usually I get in my morning. I've usually got the baby because mom's been up, feeding her at night and all that stuff. So she wants to go back to bed. And that's when I usually, start in on emails. It's the time when I get all that stuff done.
Yeah, that's so good. Johanna, what about you? Are you there?
Okay, sorry. Yes, I'm there, but I'm keeping myself on mute because I'm driving.
Perfect.
So I haven't been able to do this much since I had a baby a couple of years ago. But if I'm able to get up before she does, I would like to steal Andy's thoughts about a perfect morning. And I like to meditate first thing in the morning.
Yes, that is so good. That's awesome. Jess, do you want to go next?
Sure. A good morning for me is waking up before my kids. So if I wake up with my kids, it'll ruin my day. So I'm usually up about 5:15, 5:30. I like to have my coffee, do a load of laundry, answer emails, get set for the day, like look at my schedule and plan it all out in my head and have like that quiet time to do that. So that the moment the kids get up, I can take off running.
Yes, that's such a good answer. How often does it happen that you wake up with them?
Oh gosh, maybe once a month. I have to be real tired to let that happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Karen, what about you? What is your ideal morning?
I also have to get up and have, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes with a cup of coffee just to kind of get things going. And then I usually end up looking at email and end up stuck there for longer than I intend to.
Totally. Billy, welcome to the call. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but what is your ideal way to start a morning?
Oh, lay in bed for a good while. Kind of like today, which is why I'm 5 minutes late. I apologize. I've not converted to being a morning person yet. And unfortunately, a lot of my mentors, many of whom are very, very wealthy and successful, have always told me, you know, if you want to get here, get your ass up. So they've said it in many different ways and with more colorful language. But anyways, yeah, being an introvert at heart, my mornings are me. And so I take my sweet time getting up, and that's kind of my recharging time, I guess, if you will, before I go out and have a million meetings, make a million phone calls. A lot of people think I'm extroverted, but it kills me, you know? So I gotta get ready for the day, and then, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, my ideal morning is waking up naturally. I hate waking up to an alarm, but that almost never happens. And then I love like getting some time out on my front porch to read for a little bit. And then ideally getting into the office an hour early always feels like really great to me because the office is super quiet and I can just like get started kind of on my own before everyone else shows up. So thanks for sharing, guys. I love learning more about you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, and we're going to talk listing presentations. Jess, you are muted. So getting that.
I'm going off my puffy eye here. It's not because I'm tired. My kid hit me in the eye with a plum.
What? Julian?
No, Miles. We were teaching him how to play baseball at the park. We were leaving the park. I wasn't looking at my child, and out of nowhere comes a plum, and it hit me in the eye with my eye wide open. So it's been 2 days, and I've been kind of impressed by how seemingly good it's looked until this moment on this camera. So anyway, good morning, you guys. I'm excited to go over listing presentations with you. I want you guys to ask questions. I know it's a little bit different here having it virtually, but please feel free to unmute yourself at any moment and ask a question or chime in. I'm going to share with you how I handle listing presentations. That doesn't mean it is the only way. There are many ways that you can do this. Wow, Steve's picture just changed. There's a lot of different ways that you can do a listing presentation. I encourage you to tailor it, make it your own. The goal is for it to feel comfortable, for it to be a conversation with your client. And the best way for that to happen is for you to make it your own, so that it really fits your personality. And I usually, like, yes, I have a very scripted like presentation that I go through, but I really try hard to read my client and go with the flow. If I see that, you know, they're not a details person, I'll fly through some of like the nitty gritty details faster if they're a numbers driven person. So I try to tailor it there on the fly, but I am hitting on all of these important things. And that's why I have a presentation and it feels kind of scripted, just so that I'm not forgetting something that's really important. Whether someone has sold one house or 5 houses, I think it's important to go through a listing presentation. If they've listed with you before, I still go over a listing presentation. It's just a refresher. They don't do this every day, regardless of how savvy they might seem. I have clients who are commercial real estate agents. I still do a listing presentation with them. Best friends, absolutely. I'm doing a formal listing presentation. So I want to start at the very beginning. How do you get a listing presentation? So someone calls you, reaches out to you. The conversation usually begins like, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house. Can you tell me how much it's worth? How many of you feel like that's where it always starts, is like they kind of want to know what you think their house is worth? Yeah, okay. I think this gets even harder if it's someone you know well, right? Because they're just expecting you to like throw out a number. So I usually try to get to a point where I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I definitely want to help you. And regardless of if you're selling now or in a year, this is a really helpful conversation to have. The best way to have it is for me to come to your house and like really sit down, spend the time with you, and have a true listing consultation. If it's a friend, I might be like, I know this feels weird, but this is something I want to do. It helps me like really wrap my mind around your real estate goals and like give you a true picture. So it usually starts with getting on the phone with someone for about 5 minutes and telling them my process. So I share with them exactly that. Hey, I want to come to your house. I want you to show me around. I'll bring comps with me at that point. But to help me pull the comps, I have a survey. I'm going to email that over to you. It asks a few questions about your property so that I can pull the best comps and have all the information when I come and meet with you. Does that sound good? And they're usually like, yeah, that's great. So that's just a really short phone conversation. And then I send that email with a survey. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I will show you guys my survey that I send people. Rosie, will you allow me to share my screen? All right. Okay, here we go. Can you guys see this? Okay. So I used to do this over the phone. On that phone conversation, I would say, hey, can I get a few questions answered? So I used to do that verbally. Then I've learned, and I think actually Mark's team was the first adapter of like sending out a form. I really like that idea. It gives someone the time to fill this out and to have all the information in front of them. So this is actually one of my real listings. It's already under contract, so I'm not sharing anything that my client wouldn't want me to share. But it has the owners. So sometimes it might be more than one owner. This is a good time to ask who is responsible, who's on title, who's on mortgage. You have the address, property, phone numbers, who they were referred by, the reason they're selling. I always try to find out a person's motivation. That way when I'm having conversations with them, we can talk about motivation, what their goals are. I think that's a really helpful thing to know. Are you currently living in the home? It asks if it's leased. When would be best if you could sell the property by? So this is kind of their timeline. Going in knowing that, you can really, if you need to, you can look at last year's July and August in their neighborhood to help gauge like what you think inventory might be like or where sales were last year. So I think this is really helpful if you have like a full picture. The reason they're selling, it's helpful to know if they're relocating out of state, if they're growing their family, if they're just looking to make money off of their home and cash in on their investment. All of these things are really helpful to know. Again, it helps with motivation. I always ask their loan balance. The loan balance will help you do a net sheet. I suggest always doing a net sheet. This is something, it helps you inform your clients. People need to know what they are making off of their house in order to plan for their next move. It really helps to have the whole picture and helps them make the best decision for them and their family. So I always do a net sheet. Title companies, most title companies have this on their websites. So you can plug in the numbers. It allows you to put in your commission. I usually add extras. I'll put in what I typically see for inspection repairs. So what are those typical costs for that age of home? And it is going to vary from like a condo, a new build, or a 100-year-old home in Indy. So if you need help with that, always ask. But I usually, depending on the neighborhood, I have a good idea of like the neighborhoods I commonly work in, what those costs are going to be. I always put in, what if the buyer asks for closing costs? I think even in a seller's market, we still see people asking for this. So I developed this net sheet and I share with my sellers, like, I have built this net sheet to represent what I think would be your worst case scenario. So I go in, I've pulled comps. I know what the average sales price is. I have a lot of information on their house. So I'll show a lower sales price than what I hopefully will sell their home for. And I tell them that, but I think the net sheet is a starting place. And if worst case scenario isn't an option for them, that's a discussion we need to have. So it's just a starting point. I've certainly gone in and said, hey, this net sheet I think is off. I think we're going to be listed about 10 grand higher than what it shows here. But I wanted to have something and I didn't know what I was walking into. I think that's a fair statement if you haven't been in their house before. Quickly describe your property. So they'll describe it. It'll give you a little more information, number of bedrooms, number of baths, updates you've made to the property. This here is key because most homes, if it's been listed in the past 15 years, we can find the old listing in the MLS. But they've probably made changes. It's important to know those changes going in. It's going to help you pull comps. So I ask here, sometimes people will put things in there, say they've lived in the home for 12 years, and they say, we've painted the house entirely. Well, you should have painted it in 12 years, right? And you're like, okay, they're putting value on paint, which is something like most people just kind of expect the walls are going to be fresh. So it also not only helps you pull comps, but again, helps you figure out what your sellers are valuing, where they're seeing value in their home, and how how you can have these conversations with them. So, you know, if they're boasting on certain things they've done that aren't huge improvements, you're going to walk in there having a good idea that they think these things are really valuable, and you're going to have a conversation to talk them down. And that in itself is a really great reason to ask this question. Rate your home. So we're asking them to rate it from 1 to 10. What improvements, if any, are you wanting to do before you list? So if they think they need to redo a bathroom, you're going to have an idea of what improvements they're willing to do, and kind of where they stand on that, so that you can have conversations surrounding it. And then, how much do you hope to list your property for? This question, I think, is the most important question. I don't think too many agents actually ask this before they show up for a listing appointment. Again, I want to prepare myself for the conversation I'm getting ready to have. I just met with someone yesterday. She put in on this question 20 grand over what I think the max is that she could list her property for. Okay, so I have to go in being ready to show her and talk her down, show her great comps, and have that conversation. She decided to list with me for 20 grand less than what she put in there, right? So this question doesn't like mean you have to meet that number. You have to make that number make sense, but it gives you a really great idea of where your seller is in their headspace. So questions over this questionnaire. I usually get this a few days before I meet with them and before I pull comps. And I just send it in an email.
How did you format that? What's that in?
This is in Google Forms.
Okay.
So I can just click here and it gives me a link that I copy and paste and put in an email.
Okay.
Yeah, guys, and at the end of this call, I'm going to run through really quickly. We have most of this built out for you guys already, actually, in templated form that you guys can copy over yourself and make it look like you created it. So I'm going to show you that at the end, but just so you know, this is all already built out.
Yeah, so I usually send an email. It's just confirming our appointment because I've set our appointment. I've had a phone conversation with them and I say, hey, before I meet with you, will you please fill out this form? It's going to help me pull the most accurate data. And I've never had a client have an issue with filling this out. It's really easy. So, all right. So now I have all the information on their property. I spend time pulling comps. I'm ready for my listing appointment. How does that look? For me, I show up at the home. I usually walk in and I set my stuff down. I ask if I can set it down, usually at their dining room table. I've met in living rooms. It's always a little more awkward. So I go in, set my stuff down, and I say, hey, will you just give me a tour and show me around your house? Now, I know agents have different ways of doing this, and I know that one approach is asking the seller, hey, do you mind if I show myself around your house and give myself a tour? That allows you to do it quicker. You get to look at things without them staring at you. And you're also looking at it through a buyer's eyes and not what the seller wants you to see. I think that's a very great approach. I don't take that approach for a couple reasons. It doesn't feel like me. For me, I'm trying to bond with my hopefully future client. I want to have conversations with them. And I want them to show off their home. A lot of people are really proud of their home. And I think this is a great time to kind of bond, talk about homes, maybe give them a few pointers along the way of what they are going to change when they're listing their home. So I do the tour first. That way I can get eyes on the house, and it's going to help me with my presentation. So after the tour, I sit down with them and I do my listing presentation first. Now, I've brought a folder with me that has comps in it. And so I use the Quick CMA. Do you guys, are you all familiar with Quick CMA? I think you all are, yeah. Okay, so I usually print the Quick CMA, and then I also print every single one of those listings. I'll show you actually. Are you guys still able to see my screen? Okay, cool. So I print the Quick CMA, and then I take a printout, and I always have this on my computer too, because I'm usually going over it on my computer at the meeting, but I want to leave behind the information for them too. So I've printed out all the comps that are on that Quick CMA, and I've printed them out in the consumer with photo gallery format. So that's the one where it gives you just the quick shot of information up at the top, and then it gives you every single photo. Most people are visual. It's very helpful to go through these. I usually let my clients kind of drive on my computer. So I pull this up and I say, hey, scroll through these. These are the comps that I've pulled on that Quick CMA. Tell me which home you think is most like yours. And so they do that. Okay, sorry, I jumped ahead there. I really dove into that, what I had in my folder. Okay, I'm not showing them my folder yet though. So we sit down and I do my listing presentation. So this is my time to tell them about how I work and how I market. So again, this is something that is built out for us and it's in Canva. So Rosie will show you where this is. Can everyone see this Platt Collective? Okay, cool. Some of you have seen me do this before, so I'm sorry if this is repeat. Hopefully it's like a refresher and maybe you find something new that you take away this time. So this is really like a PowerPoint presentation. It walks your client through who you are, our brand as a brokerage. And then we have a page here. Mine, it's tailored for my team, but yours, you can have a little bit about you. I think this is a fun time to relate to your client. So you might have your neighborhood listed. In the past, I've shared like, hey, I'm a mom. I have 2 little boys. These are their ages. These are my hobbies. And then we can maybe relate on that level. So you can put whatever you want on this slide that is about you. I dive into why a team. You would probably dive into why Platt or why you, and share a little bit about how you work. Here we have why Platt, and we have some of our Platt stats. So you can boast. I think this is a great time for new agents who are maybe listing in their first couple of years in the business. You have 90+ agents stats behind you. So you can talk about, as a brokerage, we work collaboratively. We're one of Indy's fastest growing brokerages for the past 3 years. So you can really talk about the experience as a brokerage as a whole, which I think just helps sell your skill set. 10-point plan. So this is a marketing plan. And you guys, I encourage you all again, the one that was done and is in Canva for us might differ some than the one I'm showing you here. But I did that intentionally. I wanted to show you this one so that you can see how you can change things to really be around what you're selling. What is your specialty? Like, what are you going to discuss? Everyone is going to have a different listing presentation. I don't think you need to copy anyone's word for word or use the canned one word for word. Tailor it, make it yourself, put in your own logo. Steve, I know, has like this really awesome brand that he's been building. Plug that in, make it look like you. I mean, I've certainly gone into listing presentations knowing that my sellers are interviewing 1, maybe 2 other plat agents. So again, another reason to really make it yours. You can do that. This is your own business. Okay, so here I talk about my 10-point marketing plan. This is listings featured on all top sites. So hold on, there we go. This is talking about how I have this in here. This is kind of my dig at Tucker. Sorry, you guys. So my dig at Tucker, because Tucker a few years ago, they were boasting that their website had all the listings and they weren't listing on Zillow. Now I think a lot of their agents are back to listing on Zillow and Trulia. But I would go into, hey, not everyone is listing all of their listings on the top consumer sites. I think it's really helpful to make sure that your listings are getting on Realtor.com, Zillow, and Trulia. Pricing, I provide a pricing strategy, and we're going to talk about pricing more in this presentation. But I will give you a range of price, and you get to decide on the price. So you'll notice I always talk as if I'm giving, and I am giving the seller a lot of control over the process. And that's my way of making my clients feel comfortable. You might have a completely different strategy. On-site marketing, so I talk about what I'm going to leave in their home as far as marketing. So I do like a marketing sheet or a flyer that's left behind in the home. We consult with buyer's agents. So I talk about how I have buyer's agents on my team. I am speaking with other agents within the brokerage and getting opinions on price and what buyers are actively looking for in the market. Feedback on showings. Again, like this is something that's automated, right? Feedback on showings, we do that through showing time. A seller doesn't necessarily know that. And feedback to them is super valuable. So it's important to not assume that they know that you're going to be getting feedback for every showing. So I always have all of these points in here, which to you and I might seem like, well, of course she's doing that. That's like so easy to do. They don't know that. You're selling what you do, no matter how small it is. It might seem like a big thing to that seller. Bi-weekly seller updates. Again, this is something I've developed over the past couple of years. It used to be weekly. I recently switched to saying it's bi-weekly. So no matter what, I'm going to call my clients every other Monday and talk to them about the market. Right now, luckily, we don't have properties sitting on the market for very long, but if they are at any point, sometimes it's really awkward conversations to have, but I'm going to call them anyway. And if you're talking to someone who's listed a house before and it's expired, they know exactly what you're talking about. They've had someone probably list their property, and then when activity slowed down, they didn't hear from them for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. So to say, hey, I'm going to call you every other week, that sometimes is a huge thing for a seller. Targeted marketing services. So I talk about how we're always looking for buyers within their market and their neighborhood. If I'm going to do Facebook ads or Instagram ads, I can talk about that. Preliminary title work. I always run preliminary title work to make sure nothing funky is showing up on title. That's a surprise. You'd be surprised at how common it is to have like weird things show up on title, whether it's because they have a common name or something they just really weren't aware of. And then I always say satisfaction guaranteed, and I'll elaborate on that in some way. So what is the process for selling your home? So this is where I dive into kind of how it looks to sell your home. This flow chart is something, I think we have it in the presentation. It might look a little bit different, but regardless, talking your clients through the entire process in some way. So after we've shown your home, I usually touch on here. I see most homes sell right now. If they're listed correctly, we have anywhere from 8 to 12 showings. And then we receive an offer. If we don't see an offer between 8 and 12 showings, we know that your house is overpriced. Or if we've sat for on the market for 2 weeks without a showing, we know your property is overpriced. So this is a good time to start working in that pricing discussion. After we receive an offer, you're in control. You can reject, accept, or counter the offer. Most people are countering. Unless we get multiple offers, then you can just accept the highest. After we come to an agreement, there's another round of negotiations. This is the inspection. Inspection, again, you can reject. We'll get quotes for everything. You can accept everything that the buyer has asked for, or we just counter back and forth. Again, this is another time to touch on like, hey, seller, you are in control. You don't have to agree to anything you don't want to, but just know that buyers are going to ask for things during inspection. We hope that these are items that are major defects, and we can talk about major defects and go into that. A lot of people will have questions like, oh, should I fix this? Should I do this? And so we can begin to have that conversation at that point. And then we talk about everything on the back end. The cost of selling a home. So this is where I touch on, I did bring a net sheet. It's in the folder. We'll look at that after we've looked at comps. At this point, they're really starting to get anxious to hear numbers. But I charge X amount commission. So this is your time to have that commission discussion. I've certainly had clients interject at this point and say, oh, well, do you negotiate on commission? And you can have a conversation there. I have a really good script. If someone asks me to negotiate on commission, I usually simply look at them and say, listen, I charge a certain amount for commission because I will answer my phone at any time. I'm going to give you the level of service that you deserve when you're selling a home. And if I can't negotiate the highest commission for myself in selling your home, how would I negotiate the highest price for you when someone wants to purchase your home? So having that conversation, I have had very few people argue back. I've lost a few because I wouldn't discount commission, but most people respect that, and then they're really wonderful to work with. So I think kind of standing behind your work, it shows your value and how you're going to approach the entire relationship with respect, doing hard work, and working on their behalf. So closing costs, you can talk about closing costs, and yes, buyers are still asking for closing costs in a seller's market. Many are paying over list price, so they're trying to keep a little bit of money in their pocket. And that's why we're seeing buyers asking for closing costs. You can, of course, it depends on price point, so you can have that price point discussion too. Home warranty, some buyers will ask for a home warranty. Taxes, always touch on taxes because people are going to be surprised. You don't want them to get to the closing table and be surprised that they are giving a sizable credit to the buyer because we pay our taxes in the arrears. So talk to them, say, I've done a net sheet. You'll see on there that there's a tax credit. That's because we pay our taxes. a year behind. So you're covering the cost for the buyer for the time that you lived in the home. Repairs, on the net sheet, you're going to see that I've put a number in there for what I would expect for repairs on your home. I by no means have a crystal ball. I do not know what kind of things are going to come up, but if we don't see anything major, this is kind of what I expect. Again, you're not promising something, but you're trying to give them the most information that you can. Selling price is a function of the real estate market. So I tell people, I do not price your home. We are going to look at the stats, we're going to look at the data, and based on all of that information, you and I are going to price the home together. I'm going to offer a range that I think you should list your home within, but the ultimate decider is you as the seller. Home staging. So I have a few slides on home staging. I really try to talk about prepping your home for the market. Is my kid being really annoying right now? Can you guys hear him? Okay.
We can hear him, but he's fine. Don't worry about it.
Can you hear me? Because he's being real loud. So I talk about home staging and why it's important. And even if they're not going to professionally stage, these slides here allow me to talk about getting your home ready and prepping for the market and some of the things that you need to do. These are real life examples, these pictures of houses that I've actually listed and before and after photos. All of these on here are expired listings where they were listed with another realtor and then they hired me, and like most of these clients took every single one of my suggestions and moved forward with staging and painting. And so I can talk about minimizing, packing away. We want your home to look like a showpiece because people imagine themselves living in a catalog and not real life. So that's what we're trying to show. I'll talk about, this is where I have those awkward conversations about, yeah, all those kids' toys, they need to go for a little while. Like the big furniture, as much as I love your grandmother's like armoire, like what is that, you guys? Okay, as much as I love your grandma's armoire and I get that it's a family sentimental piece, it's large, it's blocking your windows, it's not allowing light to flow through the room. So let's just pack it up and allow the space to be more open. I might not be that direct about it. I might have a little bit of a flowery way to like describe that, but yeah, you know, those are conversations we need to have at this point. And talk about how prepping your home, it's really going to allow you to have the most, make the most amount of money off of your property. So here we can talk about wall color, right? Like I'm showing like a kitchen with purple walls. This is the exact same kitchen. They painted it gray. It just cleaned it up. Not a lot changed here, but it looks so much nicer. Also professional photography. It's always key. So if you use a professional photographer, throw some examples in your slides and talk up how you are marketing that property. Again, this is the same dining room. When they listed it before, it didn't have furniture. So I've put specific examples in here so that no matter what I'm walking into, I can have a conversation on it. If I walk into an empty house, I can sell having it staged, because a lot of people will be like, well, there's not bad furniture, it's just empty. Well, let's look at how much better it actually looks with like furniture. And then here it's very personal. It's like all the stuff that they live with, which is fine, but let's lighten and brighten it up and change it a little bit. So I can have all of those conversations within one presentation. The next steps. So I've hit on all the hard things at this point. And so now I can say, you know, your next steps are really to do the things that we've discussed that you might want to change for the property. You want to paint the living room, you want to paint the exterior, whatever that is. Then we need to decide on price. Again, this is something you're going to decide based on the data that we're getting ready to go over. We'll also decide on a list date. And once we have those things done, I have a specific like day of the week that I list and day of the week that we take photos. So I'll talk about like, hey, you'll have to be ready by a Thursday because we always list on Thursdays. We'll get a photographer out on Monday and then list that following Thursday. I'll have a lockbox. A lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but some sellers are very specific about access to their property. So just dropping this in here allows me to have a quick conversation about security, what they can expect for showings, and how those work. And then that is where I wrap up my presentation. Now, I can fly through these slides in 15 minutes. The entire listing consultation from the time I walk in the door to the time I walk out is usually about an hour. But like I said, I try to read my clients. This part is usually the hardest part to get through. But I think you're sharing really important information with them. So it's imperative to go over. I never want to skip this, or then I'm playing catch up throughout the entire transaction. Like, oh wait, didn't I tell you I actually list on Thursdays? Oh wait, didn't I tell you like this is how we market your property? This just gets it all out in the open right away. So I've gone over that. The next thing I do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. After that, we go through the comps. So I pull out that folder I brought and I say, all right, now it's time to go through the comps. I pull out the quick CMA and I'll pull up those pictures that I was showing you guys before on my screen. I ask them to look through them and compare their home to those homes. The quick CMA, it has at the top active listings, then it has pending listings, and then sold listings. So I like to say, hey, if we listed your property today, the active listings would be your competition. Let's look at those. How does your home compare to the competition? Putting it in that frame of mind as a competition, that's really going to help them understand pricing strategy. So then you can talk about your price range. I usually have my own notes and I've written down before I walk in where I want them to be price range wise. I already know where they want to be based on that survey. So this is kind of our time to go through for me to point out, like, I know you were hoping for 250, but based on size and number of bathrooms, you can see that 250, every house that's sold near that price point had 2 full bathrooms. You have 1 full bathroom. You also want to, at the same time, point out the great things about their property too. You don't just want to like beat them down. So you have some wonderful updates. Those are certainly valuable, but we know that the most value might come from bathrooms. You're in a great location. I'm going to sell that location because you're close to X, Y, and Z. Share your knowledge about the market and help them make sense of price. That usually ends up being a pretty decent conversation that takes up quite a bit of time. At that point, I kind of wrap it up. I let them ask all the questions. I share everything I've brought in the folder. Oh, I did want to show that. So in Canva, again, you're probably asking, besides comps, what are you taking? There are, Rosie and Michelle have done a great job providing us with just a ton of different things that you can take for your sellers. Again, get in there, tailor it, create your own kind of listing packet. You can also pick up all of this stuff already printed out, right, Rosie? We have it pre-printed in the office, so you can just grab sheets and put them in one of those plat folders along with your CMAs. So creating a folder like that and something to take to sell your services and to sell your knowledge is really easy. We've made that super easy for you. But I usually take these info sheets. This is what I call seller homework. So I leave this behind with them. But it's what they love about their home and utility information. This is going to help me market their home when they choose to list with me. So I'm leaving this with all of them. I tell them about it. And I say, let me know when you decide on, some people will decide right then when they want to list their home and how much they want to list it for. You will walk into some instances where they don't know, right? And I often will ask during the presentation, are you interviewing other agents? That feels awkward, but just ask it. It at least lets you know where you stand. And then say, that's great. I think it's always best to like know exactly what's out there and being offered. Can I touch base with you next week? And plan a time to follow up. That's going to make you accountable for following up with them. And usually that follow-up is what can get you the listing. So leaving all that behind, setting up a time to touch base with them again. I do not take a listing contract with me to this meeting. We certainly have agents that do that and fill it out on the spot. Again, a fantastic strategy, not my strategy, but a good strategy. So do what feels most comfortable for you.
Jess, how do you bring up the listing contract? Is that something you send via dot loop afterwards, or is it a secondary meeting where you go back over?
Yep. So I do have a listing contract printed out and in my folder for them, just so that they can see it and what a listing contract has in it. But I send them all over dot loop and have them sign it then. And I go over it with them when I send it. Once they've made that decision on price, we're going to ask about what's included and date and all of that. So we'll go through the listing contract and I send it over via dot loop. There are agents in our office. I get a lot, not a lot, I keep saying a lot, but there are certain agents who take it with them, they fill it out in person. Like when I get these, they're handwritten and they've scanned it in to dot loop and just assign my signature so that I'm signing it after they've filled it out there with the client. So that is another way of doing it. If you feel most comfortable securing that listing there in person and filling that out in person, you can just scan it back in and assign my signature in dot loop. Yeah, so what other questions do we have about listing presentation? How does this differ from what you guys have done? Yeah, I mean, there's a million ways to do it. Like I said, this is my way. It's not the only way by any means.
Jess, I had a question about, you had mentioned 8 to 12 showings without an offer means the house is overpriced. Mm-hmm. And then how many weeks did you say on the market without an offer?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks on the market without a showing. Yeah, so these are stats from NAR, from the National Association of Realtors. So that's where I'm getting those. You can also use some more stats from that quick CMA. So you'll be able to see average days on market and talk about that and how you should have an offer by the average days on market. Sometimes you're going to have listings that have been listed for like 200 days that throw off your average days on the market, and you'll notice that everything else has like pended in 7 days. So again, you can have that conversation. Like, we're seeing if something is priced appropriately, they're getting an offer within 7 days. I also, if I'm with someone that's really numbers heavy, and so I go through and I have my own CMA that I've printed out and I have all these notes on it. I'll look at the average list to sales price ratio in that neighborhood too. So that'll kind of show you, hey, if we list your house at this price, we can expect that this is what it sells for, right? You'll see that if it's priced appropriately, they're getting over list price. So just look at the data and know those stats, because it's going to make you sound really knowledgeable on their neighborhood. And that's what they want. They want someone who's the expert in their neighborhood at selling homes like theirs, right?
Jess, I have a question for you. I get really confused about all of the dates and timing of stuff. So like, I think I've heard that like once you get a listing contract signed, it has to be in the BLC but like 2 days after that.
Mm-hmm.
But like typically, like if they're signing that listing contract at that appointment with you, then like typically they're still going to need some like prep time. Or, you know, you said you don't list till Thursday, and what if you have your, you know, listing consult on a Sunday, or, you know, like, so how does that all work?
That's a great question. It's one I get a lot. Again, so there are best practices, and MyBor has said that it's preferred that if you have a listing contract, you're listing it within 2 business days. That will also keep you from what's the word, Jess? That will also keep you from getting any fines around clear cooperation policy, because you haven't marketed that property after having a listing contract. So that's why I do it via .loop, because it allows me to have that listing presentation and then work on date and narrowing that down and getting the listing contract in place 2 days prior. Sometimes I understand that leaves it feeling a little uneasy for a realtor, right? We're scheduling photos, we're doing work for someone, and we don't have a contract in place. So I certainly see agents put together a listing contract, and then they'll do maybe an amendment. Something's happened, they can't get the painter in, they need to change the dates on that listing contract, so you can move the dates. You can also post date it. Again, not best practice to have something signed and dated today and say that the listing live date is going to be 2 weeks from now. Not best practice. If you do something like that, make sure you're not marketing it. You're not telling people about it. If you are, you need to go ahead and put it in the BLC as temporarily off market. I would say that is like the preferred way to do it. Or you could do it office exclusive, but I would recommend TOM. And then what was the other thing? So yeah, waiting until you're getting there. I would just do it .loop or predate it and do TOM. I think those are the best options.
That's great, thanks.
Yeah.
Since we're running up on 10 o'clock, do you want me to go ahead and show people where to find everything?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, folks. Okay.
Andy, I would love, at the end here, if you want to ask your questions after Rosie's shown this, I'll stay on if anyone else wants to stay on. I mean, I think questions, sometimes everyone here might have the same question as you. So happy to answer those.
Okay, everyone. So if you are going into your Google Drive, okay, actually, I'll just go to like normal Drive. Okay, so you open up Google Drive. Pretty sure everyone knows how to get there. If not, talk to me. You click on Shared Drives, Plot Collective. You can see all the other ones I have in there, but oh, not wanting to pull up, so that's fun times. Let's see. Okay, so once you get into Plat Collective, you'll see these two folders called Buyers and Sellers Docs. I'm gonna click into Sellers Docs since that's what we're focusing on today. But you'll see those listing intake forms. There should just be one of them. So I'll get in here and clear that out. But typically what you do is you would double click on this and you would make a copy yourself, or maybe you probably have to click in to make a copy. And then once you guys make that copy, make sure to move that to your personal drive so it's not sitting in here like this copy of a copy listing intake. And that's what happened there. Someone made a copy and then left it in there. So make sure you transfer that to your own personal drive, and you can do that by move to, and it'll take you to your personal drive. So yeah, some of the stuff is in here, but most of the stuff is actually in Canva. So when you click into Canva, this is your home page. Go to the Plat Collective team. And then you're going to go to, oh, sorry, my little bar that shows your guys' faces on the way. Okay, yeah, then you're going to go to folders. And then you come and find your seller's docs. Zoinks. Okay, and this is where all the magic happens. So you can see this listing presentation that that Jess had open. Jess has made a bunch of edits to hers, so it like looks like her and her team branding, but you just click on use this template and it's going to make it your own personal copy to go through and make it like yours. And then there's tons of other stuff in here. So we have a glossary that goes through all of the typical verbs, or sorry, words that people should know. If you want to share a little bit about Plat, we have our manifesto and stats for our brokerage. We have the property detail sheet, and then we have all of these different things that go over, like, hey, this is what you should know when you sell a home. What does the appraisal process look like? Your moving checklist, just all kinds of good stuff that you should check out in here. One thing to note on the listing presentation, if you're nervous about your first listing presentation, you've never done one before, we also included notes on every page. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the presenter notes on PowerPoint, but we actually wrote you out a script of what you can say as well during that if you like get nervous public speaking. So there's all that. One other thing while we're in here with Canva, if you haven't used it before, we also have this huge brand kit in here for you, and you can see this when you're working on different projects. You just always click on this brand kit and it'll pull up. It has all of our logos in it, all of our colors, our fonts. So yeah, make sure to use that when you need to. So, okay, I'm done. Back to you, Jess.
Okay. Questions? I know we've hit our time here, so if you have to go, totally do that. But if any of you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Yeah, so these all relate to me just being brand new and not knowing much about things, but I do actually have a listing presentation to give Monday, so this is perfect. So preliminary title work, are you paying for that? I really don't know how that works. Are you? Yeah.
That's something I had the question when I was new.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Develop a relationship with a title company.
Already working on that.
Okay, so most all title companies will do preliminary title work for free.
Okay.
If for some reason you sell that house and the buyer has said, like, we're selecting title company, those title companies, I've never had one charge me for preliminary title work. It sucks for them. I feel really bad, but I'm you know, any deal that I can reasonably run through them, I've developed that relationship and they know I'm going to. So yeah, you don't pay anything for that upfront.
Okay. And then the other question I have is just staging, kind of the same thing. How is that paid for and when is that paid for? And I mean, I've got some leads on who's doing it and whatever else, but just how does that work exactly when you have it professionally?
Great question. So you own your business. You get to make that decision.
Okay.
My practice has been not to pay for it. That seller needs to prove to me that they have skin in the game and they're going to take my recommendations. I absolutely have been in transactions where I had the buyer and I saw on the settlement statement at closing that a seller was reimbursing their agent for staging because the agent paid for staging upfront when they listed the house. And then they have the seller reimburse them on the back end. So that's absolutely something you can do if you think it's worth it. Yeah.
And what I just arrange what's typical cost for something like that?
Anywhere from like 1,200 to 1,900, depending on the size of house, number of rooms you do. That's kind of a good ballpark range.
Okay, because I think that's going to be important for the one I'm about to talk to. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Jess, I have questions about these crazy vacant lots that I've been screwing up left and right.
You're not.
Okay, so I did create the contract several days ago with the anticipation that we had this private buyer. So I wanted to have the seller under contract. Obviously, as we've talked about, that buyer has fallen through, but I have never pushed these properties out to the BLC. Mm-hmm. Can I not just go into Dotloop and change the date on the contract and have the seller re-sign everything? Is that not okay, or do I have to do the addendum?
You absolutely could do that. The proper way to do it, though, is to just go ahead and do, it would be an amendment, actually, sorry if I said addendum earlier, amendment to change that listing date. So amendment to listing contract is what you would be looking for, to change anything within the contract. From there, you can change commission, you can change date, any types of details that you might need to.
Okay, and then one other question about a different potential listing property. And I don't know that this is a question as much as a statement, but I'm working in getting this property ready to hit the market. And the seller purchased new carpet to put in, and it went in on Monday, and it's like the absolute worst color ever. So I'm just really concerned that it's going to be a big detractor from the property. I don't know what to do because obviously it's there. We have to live with it. It's been paid for and installed. I guess, I don't know.
Where is the carpet and what color is it?
So it is up the staircase, in the loft area and down the hallways and in the master. It is a brown color. I had suggested to the seller that they stay in sort of a taupe tan family because other carpet that it would be married to was tan. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just bad. And in full disclosure, this is my sister, so I can talk smack about her. But it's terrible. I have been killing myself over there painting this entire house, like, you know, the master's gray, and now it has this ugly brown carpet in it. It's the worst. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. My only suggestion, and this may not be right, but this is my thought. Great photography. Someone who takes light, bright photos. Brown carpet, while not ideal, a lot of people have dark wood floors, dark brown wood floors. And photography, I think it can look fine. And then it's getting them there, drawing them in and making them fall in love with it. Master bedroom, I would put an area rug underneath the bed. Treat it like dark wood floors. Where would you put an area rug with dark wood floors to lighten the space? I would do that with the dark carpet. Just a thought. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking
Yeah,
too.
please share.
It's terrible. I'm just so disappointed, but what am I going to do?
All right. Yeah, on that note, one of the things I always offer at my listing appointments, I'm like, if you're making changes, feel free to text me pictures, ask questions, because I've certainly, and people still do, make decisions where I'm like, oh, whoa. But I'll check in with people and say, hey, have you decided on a color for this? And just see where they are and see if they'll take my ideas. It's their house. Ultimately, they're going to do what they're going to do. But yeah.
Guys, thanks for coming to this first Newish meeting. I know we have, we're like using that survey that you guys filled out to kind of base what topics. But I just wanted to check with you guys before we leave. Is there anything that you feel like, hey, next month I could really use some help with this particular topic? Is there anything that you guys want us to cover? If not, totally okay.
Yeah, I want this to be tailored to you guys in your business. So like over the next few weeks, if there's something, a hurdle you're coming against, do not feel like you're the only one that has had that issue. It is probably something that all of us are dealing with in some manner or another. Let us know so that we can plan around it and have conversations surrounding that. That really helps us figure out what's important and what is, timely for you guys. So bring it up, let us.
Yeah, and I'm curious, I have an idea of like when we touch on listing presentations again, having you guys bring like what you guys have as a listing presentation and kind of doing a mock presentation for us. Is that something that you guys would be into and getting feedback on that, or does that make you like nervous as hell? Yes, or thumbs up for yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, that's it for this one. Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you so much. You crushed it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.